Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I want to introduce you tonight to Amanda Dorenberg. Amanda Dorenberg has a reputation for disrupting traditional industries via new and emerging technologies. She currently is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, aka COMMB, and here to tell us more about what they do. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us again. So tell me a little bit about what you do as the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, COMMB, and what COMMB is.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to. So COMMB is the not-for-profit association that provides measurement services and marketing services for the out-of-home industry. And when I say measurement services, I mean similar to native online advertising, where if you buy an advertisement from Google or Facebook or some sort of SEO search, you pay a cost per 1,000 impressions, and there's a body that provides the audit on those impressions called the IAB. And so we are the equivalent of that for the offline space, which would be out of home. So we provide something called circulation, which is the total volume of audience that is exposed to out of home assets. And then in digital out of home, we provide what's called an impression down to hourly granularity. So hourly impression data based on who's exposed to the digital out of home assets across the country.
And when I think about out of home, I think about billboards. What's digital out of home, and is that different than what I'm thinking about in regards to billboards?
It would basically just be a digital billboard. So it is still a billboard, or it could be interior. So we don't just exclusively deal with outdoor inventory, such as billboards or the massive iconic inventory at Yonge Dundas Square, but we also deal with what we call place-based, which would be indoor environments. So think about restaurants when you see advertisements throughout the restaurant environment, or campus, theaters, recreational facilities, that type of thing as well. So we classify that as place-based, and we do both place-based as well as outdoor measurement and marketing services.
Billboards, are really the oldest form of media that I can think of. Do they still work? Are they still interesting? Do people still look at them? Are they of value?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually quite interesting. Out of home is the only traditional media format that has consistently outgrown from a revenue perspective year over year over the past 10 years. So over the course of the decade. And part of that is the evolution of digital out of home. So transforming some static inventory into digital, which allows more advertisers, but also more granularity from an ROI perspective and from a measurement and audit perspective.
What do you mean granularity from an ROI perspective?
So there's different ways that we could measure the return on investment for a buyer with digital out of home, as well as with static out of home. But there's just different buying capacities for digital out of home. So you can do it in a systematic way where you log into a software application, which is called a demand side platform. So it's a buying tool that agencies and brands could essentially log into and plan their entire campaign and watch it as it's sort of being executed. If something comes up in the middle of their campaign, they can pause it and then they can restart their campaign. So it has a lot of flexibility and a lot more opportunity for audience segmentation. So understanding the demographics and lifestyle clusters of the audience that was exposed to the out of home or place-based capacity. So it's quite exciting. And certainly I think a lot of that sort of technical evolution has contributed over the years to out of home's strong sort of pace in the sense of a traditional media format.
I understand you're a speaker at some big conference coming up in Vegas on digital signs. Tell me what the conference is and what you're going to be saying at this conference.
Sure. Yes. I'm quite excited. It's a big conference that happens typically every year in Vegas called the Digital Signage Expo. And people from around the world come and join the conference. It's a 3-day conference in November. I think it's the 17th to the 20th. So I'll be speaking about the evolution of data and big data in out of home, and how we're leveraging data and technology to drive out of home's innovation and work more in what we call an omni-channel media mix. So being able to compete with the insights that our buyers and our clients are used to receiving from an online and native perspective, which is really quite exciting.
An online and a native. Tell me, I understand what online is. What's native?
Native would be if you're searching on your mobile phone and you're reading a news article. So you're browsing like the Globe and Mail, and you have advertisements that fit in the middle of the content. That's what we would classify as a native advertisement. So it's sort of native to the content that you're reviewing or engaging with. And then online would just be your typical web browsing. Perhaps you're on some other sort of content website and you have a banner ad at the top or a big box ad on sort of one of the sides, or it's a whole page takeover.
Which is the bigger trend, and where is it more impactful?
The two sort of work hand in hand, and a lot of research has gone out recently that specifies how out of home and native online or mobile, as well as social advertisements, really work well together. So from a social perspective, there's a huge influx of influencer marketing, and we've found some quite compelling insights on eMarketer Insider Intelligence and Statista that speak to the combination of a campaign that leverages both sort of traditional out of home, digital out of home, programmatic digital out of home, which is just more of an automated way of delivering the advertisements in digital out of home, in combination with social or native and search ad content, see stronger lift in brand recall, as well as in attribution to whether it's in-store walk-ins or conversions online to purchasing habits.
I don't know about research, but my own personal experience, when that ad jumps up and you got 4 seconds left, I just look away for the couple of seconds, and then the first chance I get to get rid of it, I get rid of it. If it's on the that top right hand side in a box, I don't bother looking at it. When it's native in the middle of an article, I often take a look at it because it, I think, is often got something to do with the article. That's got to be why they're placing it there, I would presume, or something something I've Googled. And so therefore it's tracking my interest and giving me something of value. So I guess that I would have thought that was relevant. And I got to say that as I drive the Gardiner Expressway and things like that, the static, as you call them, billboards, particularly the third or fourth time you look at it, you don't look at it again because it just becomes part of the blur of what you're driving by. But the digital that changes, ends up grabbing your attention.
Yeah, it's very eye-catching. I think, they're meant for different capacities or different sort of campaign strategies. So clients will often leverage a combination of the two, depending on whether the strategy for the brand has a massive sort of brand awareness component to it. So they're looking for that big brand impact, or it's more of a call to action component where they're trying to drive a consumer engagement to actually go and do something. So I think, on the Gardiner Expressway, there's certainly a lot of inventory to sort of manage your gazing, if you will. There are other great locations as well that from a digital perspective, beautifully placed, like directly over a bridge overpass, if you will. So quite, almost eye level as you're driving under a bridge overpass. So there's certainly a trend in moving to digital out of home. However, the large format, sort of massive, what we call a super board, which would include some of the large format static that you see on the Gardiner Expressway. Those still have incredible value from a market perspective, because you can be very creative with the content on there. You can actually do 3D executions. You can do extensions. So your creative can extend above the board, where it's like, I don't know, if you have an NBA campaign that you're playing, you can have, somebody jumping and the arm and the basketball is sort of outside of the frame of the square structure of the billboard, which often draws your attention a little more because it is outside of the typical normal, just like poster campaign. But certainly the digital, because it is rotational, you get that flip. So it grabs your eye as you're driving through, immense traffic, if you will.
We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg, who is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, about trends in out-of-home marketing. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back. And I'm going to ask Amanda a little bit about some of her passions, which I understand is mentorship, in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Amanda Dorenberg, who is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. And Amanda, you've got a real reputation for disrupting traditional industries via new and emerging technology. Why?
Thank you. I really love to leverage technology as an impactful way to evolve various different industries. So whether it's the industry that I've spent the bulk of my career in, which is out of home, or whether it's other industries that can look to technology as a way to extend their client base, growth marketing strategies, et cetera. There's a number of different trends happening, particularly whether it's particularly as it pertains to blockchain and machine learning, et cetera, that are quite exciting. I did some consulting in that space for a period of time, and I got to work with a number of young entrepreneurs that were just, really visionary with where they saw the internet going and the use of Web 3.0. And, perhaps we were a little early, because about 4 years ago, we were building a fully decentralized marketplace, and we were going to tokenize non-fungible assets, which is essentially the equivalent of an NFT, which is a big craze these days. And, the whole metaverse is quite interesting. But I just find technology so intriguing, and there's so many creative applications of technology in both emerging startups, but also in large-scale organizations with digital transformation strategies.
Let's talk about some of the terms you just talked about. What is the metaverse?
The metaverse is basically a digital universe that it lives and breathes and has its own sort of ecosystem. So currently there's a big trend in real estate developments in the metaverse, where developers such as computer engineers are constructing, if you will, a condo in the metaverse. And within that metaverse, you can sell assets. So it's based on NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. Which is a big trend these days. So a lot of artists and musicians are selling off some of their digital work and their digital content through NFTs, and other creatives are leveraging, their paintings, if you will, and selling off portions of those paintings via NFTs. And it basically kind of works like a stock exchange, but it's for digital content or music or typically non-fungible assets.
So explain to me what a non-fungible asset or NFT is.
If it's in the real world, it would be something like art is a really good example. So in most cases, if you're putting a value on an asset, it would be something that's fungible in a financial perspective. So it's a home, it's a car, it's some sort of property, it's a boat, that type of thing. Whereas in most cases, the value of art in the sense of selling is it's one person who's purchasing it, and it could increase in value. You've got your insurance on it, but it's not something that you can sort of finance typically. Whereas in the metaverse or in blockchain and NFTs and in the trend that's currently happening, artists could put up for auction their music video or their latest single, and they can sell off portions of that so that consumers can own a portion of that song, and then they can, or that content, and they can, the value of that asset goes up and up and up. And as they sell more of the tokenization of it, it trades basically just like the stocks would trade.
So if someone's got a song, I can download it on Spotify, or stream it on Spotify and play it, or I could buy the CD, or maybe in fact buy the vinyl of it. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between that and buying an NFT of it?
It's just a different application, essentially. So it's a generation that lives and breathes in the digital ecosystem. And so if I want to, as an artist, be an independent artist and release my own content, and I don't have a budget to go and get my song streamed on Spotify, because it takes, labels and, a lot of promotion to get your music on the top of the Spotify playlist, or it takes PR connections to get onto those trending playlists. In most cases, if you're buying a CD or vinyl, you've got a major label that's backing that, and they're printing, hundreds of thousands of them. But as independent artists, they can't do that. So often they turn to various different digital applications or digital sort of distribution platforms. And NFTs have become one of those digital distribution platforms where they're able to distribute their content and they're able to sell it, but it's in the form of an NFT versus a physical, I can touch the CD or vinyl record.
I understand that one of your passions is mentorship. Tell me why.
It is, yes. I love to learn. And I think by mentoring, the younger generation of whether it's creatives or whether it's entrepreneurs, you really sort of force yourself to listen and to learn new skills in various different industries. I also think that it's just something that is of value to me. I had great mentors, throughout my career, and I still do. And when you're going through different challenges in your career and your personal life, it's so nice to have somebody that you can reach out to and say, hey, I just want to bounce this idea off of you. What do you think about this? And it becomes this sort of back and forth ideation where you both get something out of the conversation. And it's, the mentor-mentee relationship isn't just one way where it's somebody just, the mentor telling the mentee what to do. It becomes very much a collaborative ideation sort of session, which I really enjoy.
What's ideation?
I really like seeing, it's just brainstorming. That's another word for brainstorming.
I understand you invest in some of these mentors when they launch entrepreneurial ventures. Is that true?
It is. Yes. Yes, it is.
And tell me what you look for when you're investing in mentees.
That's a great question. So in a business application, I'll speak to that first versus a characteristic of the entrepreneur. So from a business perspective, looking for startups and entrepreneurs who have thoroughly thought out their strategies, from whether it's customer acquisition, growth marketing strategies. They have a vision as to where they see their product, service, or application going in, a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year plan. Whether that changes, which it absolutely will during the course of growing from startup to scale up, they need to have that sort of vision and have thought through where they want their product to grow and how they want to structure certain things. There also needs to be a realistic approach to this. So from a personality perspective or a characteristic perspective, you can't come into my office pitching me and thinking that everything you're doing is absolutely the best and you're not willing to change certain things, because products and services need to grow and evolve with the consumer or with the industry that you're sort of targeting. They need to become sort of living and breathing concepts that you can adjust and pivot. So humility and just an approachable perspective from a character standpoint is certainly very appealing to me, and drive and curiosity are also quite important to me. So entrepreneurs who are very curious, who are constantly looking to learn, constantly challenging themselves, and really driven to succeed no matter what it takes, are certainly things that I look for. Humility,
drive, curiosity. Good traits. Thank you. I understand that you recently published an article in Rolling Stone. That's kind of cool. Tell me about that.
I did. Yeah, it was very cool to see my first article in the Rolling Stone magazine. It was a really fun process. So I'm fortunate now that I get to curate content. I have the opportunity to do it monthly for Rolling Stone, as well as a number of other multinational publications, which is really exciting. But Rolling Stone specifically, I wanted to focus on my industry, obviously, is in out of home. And I wanted to kind of play off the concept of how musicians always wanted to see themselves on the cover of the Rolling Stone magazine, and how a lot of successful businesses and brands want to see themselves front and center on a billboard at Times Square or Young Dundas Square. And the two sort of deem success in various different capacities. So I kind of wanted to play off those two concepts and give some advice to musicians about how to leverage out of home to get their music and bands sort of build their brand awareness through the medium, and just kind of played off the fun concept of, if you want to be in the Rolling Stone, you can leverage billboards.
Okay, so if I don't want to be on the cover of the Rolling Stone, but I want to be on a billboard. How do I do that?
There's a couple of different ways. I've mentioned, high level earlier, but certainly programmatic digital out of home is one area that's quite accessible to independent artists because it can be more cost effective from an entry point. And it also gives you that flexibility to start and stop your campaign if you want to change your creative. Digital out of home also tends to be a little more accessible to the up and coming independent bands and artists, because again, you've got creative flexibility and creative freedom. So you could build 10 different creative messages that are displayed at different times of day or are displayed based on the contextual targeting of a specific demographic. So if you want to target males more at 1 hour versus females at a different hour, or you're looking at different age groups that you want to target throughout the week, that's all very easy to do in digital out of home and quite cost effective. Static tends to be leveraged by more of the major sort of artists who have labels and sort of are more established in the marketplace, because it gives that high impact and there is a bit more of a cost in the sense that you have to produce the vinyl that needs to then be installed on these static assets. So the combination of the two, it just really depends on at what stage you are within your musical journey or career, if you want to leverage out of home.
And what if I want to get on the cover of the Rolling Stone? How do I do that?
Use them all. Or ask me to write an article.
Okay. Or become a really top rock and roll singer, I presume.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned creative a lot. I guess I wouldn't have thought out of home is creative. Is out of home creative?
Absolutely. There's so many incredible examples of creative execution, both in digital as well as in traditional. A big trend in digital right now are 3D billboards. So Branded Cities did one recently at Yonge Dundas Square, and it was for Amazon Prime. Well, I can't remember the movie it was for specifically, but I know it was an Amazon Prime campaign where, based on the way the content was produced, the viewers at street level who are observing the digital billboards at Yonge Dundas actually felt like the content was coming out of the screen. So it was very much an immersive 3D experience, and certainly had a lot of viral components that came with that. So that's a big trend happening right now in digital. And then in static, it's really quite limitless in the sense of building 3D executions or combining sort of experiential marketing where you're creating, McDonald's has done a number of these executions where they take their McCafe cup and they'll place it at like the base of a billboard, and they'll have like a coffee pot that's pouring into the cup that's down, and they have like dry ice so it looks like it's steaming. So there's tons of opportunity for creativity. It's really quite limitless.
Fascinating. Sounds like an interesting industry to be involved in. We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. We're chatting about out-of-home marketing. We're chatting a little bit about entrepreneurship and mentorship. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk a little bit to Amanda about her own personal experiences. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting today with Amanda Dorenberg. She is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, aka COMMB. We've chatted a little bit about what out-of-home marketing is. We've talked about static versus digital. We've talked a little bit about some of the other trends in advertising. We've talked about how to get on the cover of the Rolling Stone or how to get on a billboard. We've talked about entrepreneurship, and we've talked about mentorship. Amanda, I understand that you've got quite your own personal story, and some of it had to do with fashion, and some of it had to do with brain surgery. Tell me a little bit about your own personal story, if you could. Sure.
Yeah, I actually got into the advertising industry because of my fashion career. So I was a model for many, many years, and seeing the campaigns come to life sort of from behind the scenes on set made me really interested in how they come together after the creative is developed. And that sent me down a path educationally to do a bachelor's degree in marketing, media, and communications. And throughout my modeling career, or my career in fashion, I should say, I actually owned an artist representation agency. And so what we did was work with photographers, videographers, stylists, and other artists, as well as models, to either place them with major agencies if they were a model or, fashion stylist, etc. Or on the photography side and videography side, we would work with major publications, Condé Nast and other big publishing groups to get the photographers hired, get them, work as creative directors, director of photography, or if they just had some existing work that they felt creative, and did some preemptive shooting, we would work to place that photography work in other publications, whether they were digital publications or print publications, which was a lot of fun. And I had that agency for quite some time, I think, 5 or 7 years. Simultaneously, I was still modeling. But in 2009, I actually had a brain aneurysm from something called arteriovenous malformation. So it's quite a rare disorder. It's essentially a tangle of veins and vessels in my occipital lobe that were not built for blood flow. So over time, stress, travel, all of those things that were happening as a young model, it caused me to have an aneurysm. And so that was in June of 2009. And I had to wait until September of 2009 to have a full craniotomy. So that's a full brain surgery where they take a piece of your skull out and then remove the damaged veins and vessels and tissue. And so thus, because of the medical challenges I was having, I did have to close my agency. But it's kind of what brought me, into my career in out of home, because, after recovering from brain surgery, I didn't want to open my own agency again. I wanted to kind of find something a little more stable in advertising. So I took a few contract jobs. I did PR for a quite popular, predominant fashion designer. And then I landed at a print publication working to incorporate technology into traditional print media. And so that would be newspapers at the time. And that was really quite exciting, and kind of where I fell in love with the concept of like taking technology and really integrating it to change and evolve traditional industries or media.
Brain surgery, my God. Tell me, how did you find out? Were you rushed to surgery, to the emergency with the aneurysm? Tell me a little bit about that personal story, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So fortunately, I was in Toronto at the time. I was home, if you will. I was booked for 2 photo shoots that day, and I just finished one of them, which was in Toronto's Queen East studio district. And we had some purple stuff in my hair. So the hairstylist was like washing it out in the sink, and my head was kind of like upside down for a little bit, and I felt like a head rush. And so after that, I just kind of sat down, and the most immense pain I have ever experienced. It truly felt like somebody was taking a knife and just kind of like ramming it into my brain. I got a little dizzy, and anyways, I left the studio area and went into the hallway because studios are quite hot. There's not a lot of air conditioning in these old buildings. And so there was an open window, and my makeup artist at the time actually followed me into the hallway. And fortunately for me, I found out later she was a former EMT worker, which was wonderful because she was able to ask a bunch of relevant questions, which was, is the pain throbbing, stabbing, pulsing, which helped the ambulance drivers when they did arrive. So I had collapsed in the photo shoot area. And I woke up a couple of days later in ICU. So they did a quick procedure to stop the bleeding in my brain. But there was too much damage at the time, swelling, bruising, etc., and scabbing from the bleeding, that they couldn't do surgery until the end of September. So I had to wait. I was, temporarily lost some mobility on my right side, cognitive mobility. I lost about 80% of my vision, which came back over time. I do have a permanent vision disorder, but it's been 12 years now, and you kind of learn to work with that. So it was quite a humbling experience, that's for sure.
Oh my God. How'd you get through it?
A lot of positivity. I don't know where it came from, but Yeah, I mean, I'm not close to my family, so I wasn't, I didn't have like my blood family with me. I did have the family of some close friends that were helping me through things. And at a period of time between June to September, St. Michael's had ran out of beds and they sent me home under 24-hour watch. So because I had lost so much vision and I lived in a 2-story house at the time, I had to take the mattress off of my bed and just put it on the living room floor. And that's where I spent, a couple of months until I was well enough to have a full craniotomy.
Oh my God.
That was in September. And then, it took some, a bit of rehabilitation, but I think I'm not sure what the direct answer is as to, how I got through it, but certainly positivity and just like a drive to not want to give up, I think really helped.
So you've talked about, you don't know where it comes from. And when you talked about entrepreneurs, you talked about drive and positivity, I think, as being one of the keys. So where does drive come from? Is it something you're born with? Is it something you learn? Is it something you read a book and you decide you're going to do it? Where does drive and positivity come from?
I think we all have a decision. Everybody goes through hard times. Everybody has challenges, and we all have good days and we all have bad days. And we can choose to embrace the bad days and use them as strength to, conquer them and drive on, if you will. Or we could look at them as, something really negative, and we could take it in a different path from a, emotional perspective, or how that sort of feeds into, the ability to stay focused and try to conquer. Where does that ultimately come from? I mean, yes, I did say, we all have a choice, but sometimes those choices are harder to make than, it seems. And, for me personally, I'm generally a very positive person. I don't really let a lot bother me. I don't really let anything stop me. It's something that I've always had as a young child. Perhaps it's because I was on my own for so long. I moved out when I was 16. So I think there's an inherent hustle there when you're living on your own at such a young age, and you have to make ends meet. So you just do what you need to do to accomplish that. So I think probably personally that's where it comes from for me. But generally speaking, where does drive come from? I think it's inside of us.
Why'd you have to
find a way to find it?
Why'd you have to move out when you were 16?
I didn't live in the best household environment relative to, my parental situation. They struggled with some issues, and there was some physical abuse. So I wanted to part ways with that as quickly as possible.
I'm sorry to hear that. You said you also had some challenges as an entrepreneur that have taught you some lessons. What type of challenges did you have as an entrepreneur, and what lessons did they teach you?
I've started a few businesses that have failed. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to go through that to learn, and to learn the mistakes that I made. Some of those mistakes were certainly not having a sound plan for, my 2, 3, 5 year vision as to where I wanted to take things. Other challenges were I underestimated what was necessary from a revenue generation perspective in one circumstance. So I thought that, we would be able to just, get clients and sell our product. And I fully underestimated how challenging that is on a startup, lean budget. So that was a very good learning experience. And I think certainly plays into how I approach business today, in the sense of like being very strategic and kind of always thinking, 10 steps ahead of the situation that, I might currently be dealing with.
So those entrepreneurial challenges have led you to be a better executive today?
I would think so, for sure. Yeah, personally, I definitely believe so. I think also, when you fail or when you make a mistake, you learn from it. And without making mistakes, you're not necessarily learning. You are in some ways, but you make a mistake, it really humbles you to actually have to sort of examine, why did I make this mistake, or how did this happen, and how can I prevent this from happening in the future? So I think mistakes are great to make them, because we do grow and we learn from them. And it's something that I always bring into my team culture or my organizational culture is that, as long as you're being curious and you're trying to find the best solution and you're being responsible in the way you're approaching certain things, mistakes are going to happen no matter what. So it's more about how do you recover from those mistakes, and how do we move on, as a team to get to the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve.
The industry that you're in, both the out-of-home media, but also, media in general, digital, and you've talked about lots of sort of connected businesses, and maybe all businesses have gone through transformation, but I think your business more than any has gone through an incredible amount of transportation. You talked about the internet, you talked about, NFTs, blockchain, machine learning, et cetera. As you think about your role and other senior executives in these industries, what advice have you got for them?
That's a great question. I would say just keep an open mind and empower your team to bring new ideas, and to make decisions and to make mistakes responsibly. And really just keeping an open mind, I think is critical as we evolve and transform, because we can't be set in our ways when we're looking to do any type of transformation internally, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's cultural transformation within the organization. We have to have an open mind to be able to adopt those new cultural trends or the new technology trends. If we don't have that open mind or that willingness to, change and grow and learn new skills and work with new products, it makes it very hard to actually achieve that transformation.
Several different organizations have termed this current environment we're in as the Great Resignation, that people are resigning en masse. They are looking at the last 2 years and like the hybrid model or the work at home model. They're less interested in being part of corporations. They want more purpose in life. How do you deal with that? And what advice have you got for companies that are dealing with those issues?
I think companies need to adopt a hybrid approach. There needs to be more of a work-life balance. And if there's anything that, the pandemic had shown us, it's that people can work very effectively remotely. So I've never been of the mindset that people need to sit in an office and you need to clock in at 9 and you can leave at 5 and then that's kind of it. I think if we actually provide more of that balance to our team members and our staff, that they're actually more likely to go above and beyond in their roles. I've seen it firsthand, even at COMMB, where when I first started, some of the team were used to working a 9 to 5 schedule, and they were commuting 2 hours one way to get into the office, and they had to be there in the office. However, when we go into this remote space, and certainly my perspective is a bit different, I think traveling 2 hours to get to an office one way is actually counterproductive, because it's 4 hours in somebody's day that they're spending commuting and they're tired. So they're going to be less productive ultimately. But if they're in a flexible environment where they have the option, if they want to come into the office and collaborate and work, that's great, they have that. But if they also just want to work from home and not spend 4 hours commuting, then that's perfectly acceptable as well. I mean, we live and breathe on Zoom and Teams and Google Hangouts these days, and whatever other digital conferencing platforms we're using. And we've seen that it is very effective. Certainly having that FaceTime is nice and something that I do enjoy. But I think you have to adopt a bit of a hybrid approach to draw and maintain or keep that talent in-house.
But many millennials, or just people in general, say they're looking for something more than just a salary and purpose, or a corporate philosophy or objective or vision that they can buy into becomes important. Is that something that's changed, or has that always been around?
I think it's always been around, but it's become more important to people. And I think, again, as the pandemic has shown, we were able to manage successfully in a remote environment. So that brings attention or draws attention to the fact that, okay, well, just having a salary and showing up every day really isn't enough for me, because now I've got visibility into a better work-life balance because I'm at home. And, if I need to take a break midday to throw in some laundry or to walk my dogs, like I have that flexibility to do that. I'm not just like rushing in and out. So I think it's just drawn it's just drawn more attention to the necessity to have a culture that does provide more than just a salary. It provides, growth opportunities, educational plans for career enhancement, succession planning, that type of thing, empowering your team members to want to, take my job or take the VP's job. The educational side of things with respect to like corporate growth is very important, I think. Also, again, like the flexibility in schedules is something that's really critical. Other incentivization components certainly help to attract and maintain talent, such as like, gym memberships or not necessarily like team building where you're going out to like an escape room all the time, but other cultural sort of things that help to sort of enhance the environment that you're working in, I think are very critical.
Can you create a culture digitally through Zoom or Teams or Google Hangouts?
I absolutely think you can, because it's a communication tool. So if you're working in a remote space, first and foremost, you need to evaluate as a company and as a leader within the company, what is my primary communication tool? So are you using Slack? Are you using Microsoft Teams, where you can actually collaborate quite easily? And, in either platform or similar platforms, you have both corporate channels, if you will. You were talking about specific topics that are impactful to the business, but you also have, personal channels where it's like, we've got one at COMMB, Weekend Vibes. We've got music recommendations. We've got movie recos. We've got, various different sort of social channels where we're just talking about random social things like you would if you were sitting in an office together. You get sidetracked from work and you just kind of veer off into, well, this weekend I'm going to go do this.
That's fascinating. So I think one of the complaints is people say they've missed the coffee, the coffee or the water cooler conversations and the conversations as you're walking into the boardroom and out of the boardroom, because the meetings sort of start and end right on the hour.
I think that also, again, that comes down to the planning of the meeting. So for all of our meetings, they often start very social. We have 5 minutes at the beginning while people are joining, or 10 minutes at the beginning while people are joining as a buffer. And then we've got a set sort of agenda that we're speaking through. And then at the end, it's usually pretty casual. So people come, might stay on for a couple minutes extra just to chit chat, or maybe they bounce off to their next meeting, but certainly trying to work in a bit of a buffer to the Zoom meetings is very important.
We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, COMMB. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments with Amanda in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Amanda Dorenberg. She is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, COMMB. She's also had quite the extensive, interesting background. She was a fashion model. She was an agency rep where she represented different fashion individuals. She's been an entrepreneur on several occasions, and she's now working with a not-for-profit that's about out-of-home marketing and measurement. Sounds fascinating. You've got this sort of entrepreneurial side and this corporate side. How do you fit in both and juggle both, or are you one more than the other?
I think I'm more entrepreneurial than I am corporate. I would say my spirit and my work ethic is very entrepreneurial, where I'm not looking for somebody else in the team to, do something all the time, or you're not hiding in a big company where you've got, 100 to 10,000 employees. So it's easy to pass the buck, if you will. In that sense, I'm very much an entrepreneurial worker where, titles aside, it doesn't matter what needs to get done. It needs to get done. So I'll step in and help, and I expect, the rest of the team to do so. So in that perspective, I would definitely classify myself as more entrepreneurial, because I think in the corporate side, it's a little easier to hide if you don't want to do certain things or you don't like to do certain things.
So you're now president of a company. You were an entrepreneur. You started several businesses. You were a fashion model. You were an agency rep. You went through what sounds like a horrific brain surgery experience. What are your lessons learned in life?
I like to say ABC, which to me is always be curious. I love learning, and I love humble people. So to me, humility is a huge part of my life. I like to make sure that I'm approachable and accessible to anyone, which I think leads me to why I like to mentor, because I don't think that at any level, whether I'm the president of a company or otherwise, it should make me inaccessible. I think that it should make you more accessible because you've got a bit more experience, and maybe you have some, great life lessons to learn.
Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
If there's some young entrepreneurs out there that are listening tonight, do you have a message for them?
Just keep grinding. You've got to stay chasing those dreams.
Keep chasing those dreams. Sounds like a final good answer. Oh, we've been chatting today with Amanda Dorenberg, who is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us a little bit about hard work, about being curious, about being authentic, I guess it is, and being approachable and being real. And also, I think you talked a lot about work-life balance. So all good messages to take away from our conversation today. That's our show for tonight. Thank you to Amanda for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can also stream me online from anywhere in the world at www.saga960am.ca. And you can get all my podcasts and videocasts afterwards at briancrombie.com, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, Audible, Apple, and Speakeasy podcasts. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Good night. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.